Hello and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most revived work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
Oh, and what's special about today, Elliot? That's right, it's weekday recording night. Woo!
Yeah. I got sick, so we're here a bit later than normal, but that's fine because now we've got two cool chapters to talk about.
Yep, and of course, everybody following along at home would have already known that because they follow us in the Discord, which is the right place to get that information. So, of course, everyone already knows that they went to duffmedia.com/Discord and joined the Discord for free, so they would get all this information. So we don't even need to really mention it.
Yeah. One thing we should mention though is obviously we did like a mailbag in our last episode, and we said we'd talk about it in this episode, but because this is late and there's two chapters, we're actually going to do it in the next episode. So feel free to send us more mailbag questions, or obviously show up for the recording and you can ask your questions live. But yeah, no mailbag this week. We'll do it in the next one.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And you can, still leave your questions in the discussion thread, which we linked in the show notes down below. But let's get into it, shall we, Elliot? The first of these two chapters, go for the throat 23.8 from Lucy's perspective. And really, both chapters are from Lucy's perspective. We just get a bit of other stuff in the next one as well.
Yeah, it really feels like... we'll get into it, but this is definitely a Lucy-focused week, for sure.
As every week should be. So the trio are waiting for the defector Kenneteers to make their way over, hoping to gain some insight or advantage that would be helpful against Charles.
Yeah, and while they're waiting, we get this bit where basically we find out Sylvia is essentially stalking Jasmine post the car park scene.
Yeah.
And I love, there's this little moment where Lucy is sort of like, well, yeah, this is kind of your fault, when Verona apologizes, and Avery has to give her one of those quick, like, back of the head whacks. And it's just a funny moment because it's not usually Lucy, I think, who is the one that needs one of those kind of "you being a dingus" taps that Avery and Verona are often giving to each other.
Yeah, she's usually above it, but a quick dingus tap is what she needs here.
Yeah, and I think it's just because it comes up again in the chapter. Like, there's a moment with Adrian later where Lucy sort of leads with the worst foot forward, and Avery kind of has to help manage the conversation till Lucy can get to the good part. But it's just like, it's a bit of a recurring bit. I guess as it feels like we've got two chapters here that are really dealing with some of the culminations or climaxes of Lucy's arc. I think it's like a really funny vibe to sort of remind us right at the start here that, like, sometimes Lucy can forget to, put her nicest foot forward, I guess.
Yeah. I really am looking forward to the Jasmine and Sylvia interlude that we're going to get, where they have a horrible conversation and Jasmine is not able to give Sylvia any answers. Oh, that sounds like it would be so much fun.
Yeah, it's funny because I had the same reaction. Like, when the chapter opened with this and then sort of pivoted to the talk with the Kenneteers, I'm like, yeah, okay, like, all this war and fight with Charles stuff is fun, I guess, but like, I'm really here for the Sylvia Jasmine, like, awareness content, and I'll like quickly realizing that thread is probably the one that interests me the most. I can't wait. Like, especially, we obviously learn later that part of the Kenneteers' plan is a bit of a mass awarening anyway. So I think it would be really funny if the interlude you were talking about with Jasmine and Sylvia in it included that halfway through.
Yeah. Sylvia becomes aware, but kind of accidentally, from Jasmine. Yeah. I don't know. It would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Jasmine is just a really fun character to be in the head of, and this is a perfect situation to really make her squirm.
Yeah, like, just, she's been so angry since she became aware about having that information kept from her and all the secrets there. So I love watching her kind of have to play that role, and I think it would be interesting watching her be the person who has to bring someone like Sylvia into that world, because it might help her gain a bit more perspective about what the girls kind of went through with all this. There's also a moment where they talk a bit about how like Sylvia operates with she has this network of people and they're all kind of her experts, and
Mm,
she turns to them for things. And like, so Jasmine is her parenting / Verona expert, so that's why she's still gone to Jazz even though she was kind of told to go to Kelsey and Connor.
mm,
And like, it just made me feel like a complete idiot because we had that Avery chapter a few weeks ago with like the whole thing with Sylvia in the parking lot was in an Avery chapter. And we were talking so much about how cool that was because of all the overlap between Verona and Avery. But like, that whole thing with how Sylvia operates with a network of experts and stuff is so similar to how Avery operates. I feel like such an idiot that we didn't call that out. Like, so I guess I'm just doing content that we should have done a few weeks ago, but
mm,
it adds a whole layer that I missed when it happened to that thing with Avery helping to steer Sylvia and Verona in a better direction because
mm.
like Sylvia was kind of doing an Avery a bit when how she was like neglecting her family and cutting the ties there. Like, yeah, I just feel like an idiot for not seeing that parallel earlier.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I do like that. It's a fun indication that Avery is more human, or not more human, better reacting to these situations than Sylvia.
Yeah, like Sylvia has a lot of overlap with Verona too. So it's kind of like as we're talking about how much Verona and Avery overlap in that Kenneth found stuff, it was like Sylvia was kind of the almost the worst of both worlds in that regard,
Mm,
in that overlap. And so it was like the two of them that managed to make something happen together. Yeah.
mm,
Anyway.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so the Negeteers rock up and they kind of get into a bit of a spat with Lucy about how harsh they should be on the X-Force-One. Adrian specifically is kind of defending them because society and their families are to blame and all that jazz, which is fine. But I don't really know what point Adrian is looking to make because it's Adrian and the defected Negeteers obviously left the side of their teachers here for a reason, so it's not like they aren't in the wrong.
Yeah, it's a really interesting because it feels like a debate that's been going on in the fandom and on this podcast a number of times too, with
Mm,
like, yeah, like how much do you factor that in? Because this is, I remember talking a lot about this when Charles was first properly outed as the story's villain, because it was
yeah.
like, I do think Forsworn should, well, ex Forsworn should get a fair chunk of extra leeway, but like
Hmm.
obviously, yeah, you need to stop them.
Yeah, you still need
Yeah,
to stop them from committing the crimes that they're committing.
yeah, I see it as
Like,
more of a factor you're considering when you're deciding what to do about things afterwards, if that makes sense. Like if you're looking at this sort of rehabilitative punishment, it's like I think they get to be a little bit more like, well, yeah, but I was forsworn, so as I'm working to become a better person, maybe get a little bit more slack because I went through some shit or something. I don't know. Like it's not that
yeah,
simple, but like I don't know. I do feel like mentally I give a lot more leniency to someone who's forsworn to a point.
um, Lucy needs to learn one of my favorite argumentative tricks, which is asking the very bitchy question, what would you have me do? Which is a great question when somebody is poking holes in your plans for you to turn around and say, okay, you can criticize. What are you going to propose? Because
Yeah.
they never, Adrian, I don't think would have an answer in that situation.
Yeah, because as you said, it's like a valid point he is raising here about like that the Forsworn have been through some shit, and to a degree it's not their fault, blah blah. Even though Yi Yun's standing right there, um, but yeah, like what as you said, kind of so what? Like
Yeah,
we need to stop them right now.
yeah, exactly. Um, anyway, good times. Lucy's the
Yeah.
best. I
there's,
love
there's
that
also a bit.
Lucy. Sorry, I just have to say, I love that Avery's like, oh, we're trying to get off on the right foot, and Lucy's like, yeah, I was getting there.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as that dingus tap moment at the
Yeah.
start of the chapter, where it's it's just like you could have started there, though. I think is Avery. Like it's like that little moment just summarizes the difference between Avery and Lucy so perfectly.
Mm.
Because Avery would have led with that foot, I think. Anyway, I love when they're trying to, really reinforce that Seth was already a bit of a creep before he got forsworn. They mentioned that he made it past at Snowdrop, and Nomi says like her, and it just made me have this realization. I want Mae Whitman to play Snowdrop in the future animated Pale series.
Yeah, I like it. She can do a young Snowdrop voice, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that like I just had to get that image out there because it hasn't left my head since I read that line. There's also, we've got to talk the moment where Lucy reveals that Gashwad is just following them.
Yep.
Because
when he teleport. Whoops.
When he gave them the shoes, I just assumed he'd worked magic.
Of course. As anyone would assume.
Fucking idiot. And like she brings up the point, what's he planning to do when they split up? Like he doesn't show up in the next chapter, so like because that's the thing. It's like if you're gonna pick a Kenneteer to follow when they split up and you're looking for violence, you go with Lucy, you idiot. Like, yeah, I think we called out at the time that like Gashwad wants to be a dog of war and he's really bad at it, but I didn't realize how bad at it he is. Like,
well, if I could defend Gashwad for a second here, the way that you develop a magical ability is by kind of willing it into the world, and yeah, exactly. So if he wants to gain the ability to teleport, like this is actually a step to doing that in this world, right? Is to say, yes, I can teleport, and then run, hide around so that you can make that happen.
I think it would be if they didn't know that he was following them. Like, this is just establishing a pattern of him following them like Gollum. And the worst part of this is it means that he's not in Bubbleyum's or Bubblecum's crew next chapter when everyone's turning into their weapon forms, which I do just want to call out. I'm mad about because I still want to know what Gashwad's weapon form is. But whatever.
Maybe next time. But yeah, so Louise arrives and is desperate for a smoke, and it pretty quickly becomes clear that the Negeteers can't really offer much here.
Yeah, and I was, when I first got here, I was really, when I was reading this part of the chapter, I was really ready to judge Louise for smoking again. Like, I was kind of like, given her health history, you really shouldn't be smoking. You don't get to have just one, blah, 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 like Avery and stuff are doing. But then she gives that little thing where she's like, well, I'm pretty stressed right now because my house got blown over. My new squeeze is fighting in a war. Like, my town might die. And it convinced me. I was like, yeah, you know what? Fair enough. Like, smoke up a storm.
Yeah. She's earned one.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, because, the story kind of opened with Louise being too soft on herself at this. Like, I remember that was a big thing in the prologue, as it was like Louise was not taking care of herself. And then I guess I was still sort of primed to be in that headspace. And then she explained it, and I was like, yeah, no, it's circumstances, actually, that makes sense.
Yeah. I like that part of the oaths that the Negeteers made was that they couldn't be convinced to join the side of the Kenneteers because I guess Charles knew, one, he's in the wrong, and two, the Kenneteers are good at convincing people who are in the wrong to join the right side. I don't know, it's just kind of funny to me.
Yeah, I loved that Rook was the one who sort of told them this too. They're like, yeah, Rook told us that you're really good at turning enemies over onto your side. It's like, why don't we all take a step back and think about why that might be?
It's not an ability. It's just that they're right and their enemies are wrong. I don't know. It's not like magic.
I mean, same diff in this universe, but yeah.
Very funny.
Yeah, also, like, again, they're like, oh, Rook told us this. So Rook has also been coordinating with the defector Negeteers.
Yeah.
Just like, is there any team she isn't playing for?
Yeah, well, fuck, I can't remember what it was now because I think I made this note or thought about this, but I'm pretty sure in 23.d there's another moment where Rook is doing something helpful for the team, and it's just like, Rook, what are you up to? Like,
Pick a
what?
fucking lane.
I know. She just anyway.
I love what the story's managed to do with Rook. Like, it's been over a year of us talking about Rook like this. I reckon it's so funny.
Mm. Yeah. Hey, do you think if they break their oath, if they help the Kenneteers and break their oath, Charles will forswear them, right? Which is again just another classic Charles hypocrisy moment. But I don't know what else he would do.
Yeah, I think he said in the past, like outright when somebody called him out on it in the story, he said he would forswear enemies if he needed to. Like,
Yeah.
his
God,
his
Charles, you're
entire
such a
position
fuck.
is, well, yeah, I mean, his entire position is essentially there is no tool not worth pursuing this goal. It's just
Yeah.
that goal seems to ever so slightly be shifting from burn it all down immediately to, oh, I'm on top of the pile. We should slow down now.
Yep.
But yeah, uh, no, I mean, yeah, he's been pretty open about the fact that he will happily cross that line if it services his goals because he thinks they're that honorable, or he used to.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Like, I do wonder how these oaths will work if Charles is beaten. Like, I wonder exactly what the oaths were and what they mean. Like, I don't know. It just seems interesting to me that based on what these oaths could be, does it stop the Negeteers working with the Kenneteers even if Charles is beaten?
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
Like, that's an epilogue problem, admittedly,
Yeah.
but like, yeah.
Yeah. I do like the idea that the Kenneteers ask the Negeteers if they can drop by, what's it called? The hall where the
Sergeant Hall.
Sergeant Hall, that's it. To kind of, recruit some of the aware, uh, which they say they can't because they can't help the Kenneteers. To which the Kenneteers say, what if they were as much a problem as a benefit? Which immediately makes me think, who the fuck are they going to bring in? Like Sharon? Like, what the fuck is happening here? It
Uh,
sounds very fun.
Kevin, like the
Yeah.
evil eye guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's like, yeah, you just got to get net positive, right? So you bring Clem, but you also bring Sharon.
Yeah.
You bring Daniel, but you also bring Shelley.
Yeah.
Like, just cancel everyone out.
Yeah. Pretty good.
I mean, again, just adding to the vibe of like a big theme in this week's chapters, which I thought we were already there, but it's like the stakes are continuing to escalate. And more people are getting involved. Like, we've got this whole war going on at the BHI with like all of Kennet, and we're still like, there's still more people on the way from both sides. Like, the scale of this war has just gotten crazy. In fact, the witch hunters are probably the only group I can think of who we haven't heard from yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like, yeah, like Sergeant Hall is getting a mention. Yeah, like Helen's family's coming to play. I think we get told that Breastbiter's mum isn't coming. I forget what her name was. She wasn't
Yeah.
actually his mum, but same diff.
Breastbiter's a queen.
Yeah, Gerhild. That's it. So, I wanted to talk about this moment where Yiyun talks about how she's getting out of Dodge, like, because I thought that was a really interesting follow through to the discussion of the Forsworn and what they did wrong that we were just talking about. Because, like, Yiyun outright says here, she's like, I did a lot of fucked up shit and I have not made amends, and I'm not gonna. I'm leaving. I'm gonna start fresh. I'm gonna be in debt to some pretty shitty people, but like, I think I can crawl out of it. Like, I can, make a name for myself and hopefully break even. And yeah, I'm just getting out. And like, I didn't hate that. Like, but I was honestly a little surprised that it didn't seem to trigger anything in Lucy. Like, Lucy's normally the most like, no, you need to make up for the bad shit you do sort of person. But even Lucy just kind of seems to accept that. And I thought I thought that was really interesting. That sort of
Mm.
Yiyun openly does not plan to make amends, and both me and Lucy seemingly didn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's at least trying to, well, I don't know, be better and break out of the cycle. You know what I mean? And that's respectable.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Is in my eyes, Yiyun is already kind of rehabilitated, so to speak. Like I feel
Mm,
like most of the fucked up shit she did was when she was in a different space, and perhaps she didn't really understand how fucked up it was. But now I'm kind of
yeah,
like, yeah, well, I mean, she's doing her best.
yeah. You know, you can't. She actually literally can't help them. So what else can she do? You know.
Yeah, yeah, there is that too. Yeah, I guess I just thought it was like an interesting moment for uh I don't know, it stands like as an interesting point, I guess, when the story is talking a lot about how people are going to make up for bad shit they've done. We are exploring a case where somebody's just saying, no, I'm leaving,
Mm,
and everyone's like, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so they're talking, they're chit chatting, they're having a good time. But then suddenly the Alabaster shows up because Charles has started making his move on Kennet below, and things really start to pop off, I guess.
Yeah, I think for from here till the end of the next chapter, it's all fucking action,
Mm,
and like high flying stuff. Like I really love, like I feel like Pale has gotten to do it more than any other Wild Boar story because of the switching POVs. But I love it when you have these moments like we know that this is coming, or like as soon as the Alabaster shows up and starts talking, we're like, oh, this is that thing, and it's that like dramatic irony is really fun to see it used like this, where it kind of lets us be very comfortable knowing what's coming, and so watching the Kenneteers puzzle it out like in an action scene is really fun.
mm, yeah. Yeah, it is a fun one. Yeah, and I know we talked about this last chapter. It's kind of bonkers that Charles is doing this. I guess I just want to say that again. I don't know.
Charles is on fire. I can't wait to talk about what he does in the next chapter too, because he's killing it this week. I love him so much.
Mm,
He's a fucking maniac. Um, Like, yeah, I guess we'll talk. Like, there's a lot of there's more detail, I think, in this chapter into like kind of what exactly this means for Kennet below, on top of him sucking up individual people and whatnot.
mm,
But yeah, this is such a crazy move.
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy.
Like
And yeah, we'll get
he
to his other crazy move later.
yeah, because he more or less he sucks up all the best parts of Kennet below. Like that's what sucks, is what gets left are
Yeah.
all the people who agree to work with him, which is just the shit scum. It's people like the Family Man, and it's like, yeah. He just made he left us with the worst parts of Kennet below, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah, but like it it just doesn't I don't even it's just bullshit. He just is pulling bullshit, right? Like
Oh yeah. Oh,
that's
let's
the
talk
thing that's
about
the
that
most frustrating about it. Yeah, sure,
at the
sure.
end of the next chapter. We'll be able to say that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Um so yeah, anyway, the Kenneteers are kind of desperately trying to stabilize Kennet below, and they recruit the help of goblins to get some kind of key materials and such to do so.
Yeah. Oakham's also there, and I'm curious if you
I said goblins.
goblins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify if she was being included in that category. That's fair. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, I do love like Lucy is really starting to make friends with this little toad loving goblin.
Mm,
Um, like she explicitly calls it out as like her Pekasonot, basically.
mm,
Um, and I mean, obviously, that feels like a great lead into the next chapter, where we're obviously seeing kind of the Eighth Court in full bloom. Um, but yeah, yeah, I love this little moment where it's sort of like in amongst all this violence, we are seeing Lucy kind of connect with a goblin. And it's like there's a little bit of goblin for everybody in this place Toadstool has created.
mm, yeah. Oh man, this little toad goblin is so cute. Um, there's this funny bit, funny in a tragic way, where Verona is like, "Oh, what about Mal and Anselm?" And a goblin pipes in. Mal's gone, and Verona looks down, and the goblin says, "Went to fight. Said it would be funny." And so it's like this fake out of like Verona thinks Mal's gone, then finds out, oh no, Mal has just gone off to fight. But we know Mal is gone.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird, really tragic beat where Verona's like relieved, and then we're like, don't be too relieved, Verona.
Yeah, I like the other thing, like, in this chapter that is sort of poking at that wound, I think, is there's a lot of tension between Oakham and Verona, kind of in the first part of the chapter. Like they're shoving each other and kind of prodding each other in a way that to me felt like more than just standard half street hooligan shit stirring of each other, and more like they were actually kind of a little annoyed with each other. And I guess knowing that they were doing that while Mal is dying,
Mm.
it hurt me even more because, like, guys, don't fight. You're about to lose Mal. But yeah, and you know, and that kind of goes away because they're really in sync. Like, I love what happens to Oakham in the second half of this chapter. Like she gets so. I feel like Oakham really carries the sense of like dread and gravity of what's happening to Kennet below for a lot of
Yeah,
the second half of this chapter because
for
she's
sure.
kind of our normal person who is like freaking the fuck out, and we know how important Bracken is to her. Like yeah, I think the way Oakham is included in this chapter and the next one is really fun, especially while the Kenneteers are talking about the idea of awarening a large mass of people. Sort of the first person they were kind of partially responsible for awarening is
Mm,
here and like interacting with them, and is kind of an interesting user case for whether that's a good or a bad thing.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, you're right. Oakham is doing the Lord's work here. While also, yeah, I mean, she's like so worried about Bracken and Bag, rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
She's a champ. Um, but yeah, so Lucy opens another door to Kennet below at the monument, and then kind of stands to guard it from the pressure pouring through it, including the family man. He's back again. He just won't die.
Yeah, but like everything about the setup for this fight, including the family man, is so cool. Like obviously it's at the dog of war monument to John, which is like so cool. It had not. I kind of forgot this existed, and then when Lucy was like, "I'm going to make the third pillar the dog of war monument," I had constructed, I was like, "That's so fucking cool."
Mm,
And then we get this imagery where the portal gets opened between Kennet below and Kennet above, and Lucy just sort of straddles the entrance, like she's got one foot in both. Um, and you've got this like horde of the worst of society, kind of, pressing in on her. It's just like, fuck, this is like such a distillation of everything Lucy has been about this entire story. It's now her between the worst of society and Kennet above. Like it's
mm,
and yeah, she's gotta have the fangs or whatever for her fox form. Like it's so epic.
yeah. Yeah. It is epic. And, as we'll see in the next chapter, it lives up to that promise for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Like this kind of feels to me a bit like this fight right here is representing kind of Lucy's not final fight because there's obviously going to be more, but this is sort of a big Lucy climax moment, I guess.
Mm,
And yeah, like the family man is such a perfect villain for that. I mean, he was the last time she beat the fuck out of him too.
mm,
Uh, and yeah, like just everything about the symbolism of it is great.
mm,
Um, I also love how like we got to talk about the fact Liz helps make all this happen. Like she obviously hurries Lucy to this spot, opens the portal, is just kind of having to actively work with them because this dumb idiot has ended up in a thing where Charles is basically gutting her just to work
mm.
for the Kenneteers. And again, it's just you reap what you sow, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, you do feel a little bad for Liz that she's just
I
like
do.
so left in the shit. Yeah, I
She's
don't know.
she's just an idiot, and you feel a bit sorry for her because she's trying to play a game with people who are just she's just not good at it. Yeah, she's going to be another person. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to Liz when this is all over. You know, like, like she's kind of still pretty integral to the town in a lot of ways. So seeing how they cope with her, uh, is almost like is going to be really interesting, especially alongside potentially Charles if they don't kill him.
Mm, yeah, yeah. But then, of course, we get this perfect moment where the family man says to her, "My child," and she says, "You have no idea how stupid that is." Um, which is so perfect because the joke is that he's
Yeah,
setting himself up as a father figure under the monument to dead father figures, right? Like it's ridiculous. But then the next chapter is kind of takes that a step further and is effectively explicitly about what Lucy has learned from her dead father figures as she's fighting the family man. It's just so funny.
I don't. Yeah, because I read this the first time, and he's like, "My child." I'm like, "Wow, is Lucy getting in on the joke that it's a really bad idea to be one of her stepdads?"
Yeah.
Um, but then, yeah, like the next chapter takes that in a really fun direction because, like you're absolutely right. It's kind of a study of all the strengths of her, various teachers and stuff. It's a
Yeah.
great lead into the next chapter for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, shall we? 23.d, kind of a bubblegum interlude, but
Mostly,
sometimes also Lucy.
and I think having a dot D be a goblin chapter just makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Great. Love that. That's a good one. But yeah, so Bubble and Turd are looking out over the fighting pit. Turdy has been beaten pretty badly and is kind of wondering what's it all for.
And I mean, like, we see we've seen Bubblegum and Turdy in flashbacks before and whatnot, but like seeing them here in this scene, I was just like, man, fairies fucking wish they could be in a romance story this compelling. Like,
Mm,
I'm so on board with Bubble and Turd. Like, just there's no way whatever Guillermo and that old mate guy he had it couldn't have been this cool.
mm, yeah.
This is the perfect love story.
It is good, isn't it? Like the relationship between Turdsy and Bubble is just so delightful, and Turdy is still my favorite other in this whole story. He's just so wonderful. And you really feel the respect and love so strongly
Mm,
in this chapter between the two of them. And like you feel how much, I guess because we're in Bubbles' perspective, you feel how much Bubbles' respect and love for Turdy leads her to grow into this badass that like leads a goblin army to defeat some crazy powerful monsters like in this chapter, basically.
yeah, like I agree. You really get the sense for how much of an impact he's had on her. I mean, there's a bit where she kind of explicitly calls out that she's like,
Mm,
I'm doing this because he taught me blah blah blah. But it's like, yeah, she because a big part of why she wins is she's able to work with the other goblins and manipulate non-goblin groups so well, and it's because of his influence
mm,
that she's grown into that person. But also what I love is that clearly cuts both ways, like most explicitly in this flashback where we cut to Toady borderline being suicidal is the vibe he kind of gives off here. Like he's ready to
mm,
just give up on life. And she completely talks him off that ledge and saves him. And then we've seen at other points in the story how much she means to him, and it's like that. Like that's what's so great about them as a couple, I think, is it's like they've both helped each other grow into great people. And I mean that's like Pale in a nutshell, right? As kind of other people are what helps you be a better person and grow and all that, and that diversity. It's like they're such a great micro case study of that.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and again, just the best couple. Like who else could possibly claim best couple in Pale? Connor and Kelsey aren't even close, and that's my other
Um,
go-to.
that's a good question. Who could you claim as best couple? Hmm.
People are going to say Avery and Nora, and it's like, look, they're fine or
People
whatever.
might
But
chuck in a Chloe and Nibble.
Chloe and Nibble's a good one. Then I wouldn't say they're Toadie and Bubble, but they're a good candidate.
Jasmine and Anthem.
Another good candidate, strong candidate.
Yeah, I think yeah, we're
Charles and
getting
DeRocha is a
Charles
good
and
one.
Derusha. It's a funny one. Yeah, I guess Bubble and Turd are the top of the list. I reckon for sure.
Yeah, we will have to do that and all fact up to some sort of best couple awards or something.
Yeah, that sounds fun. But yeah, so we're kind of jumping forward here to Bubble being on the front lines of the attack on the BHI. Oh, Zed and Bree. We forgot about Zed and Bree.
Oh, again, good couple, but
They're no
Toadie and
Bubble and
Bub.
Toad, yeah.
Mm.
But anyways, yeah, Bubble is on the front lines of the attack of the BHI and starts attacking the ordinary family with goblin glamour. But
Yeah.
before we get to that, there's just a fun little pre-battle few moments here, which are wonderful.
Yeah. And I want to start because it's going to get lost in all the great other things to talk about. But the body horror stuff going on with Bubblegum's body is a low key delight throughout the chapter. And I feel like if I don't bring it up now, I'm going to forget. But like the stuff she's done to her tongues, the giant wads of gum she's somehow storing in her mouth. I don't understand the physics behind that, and that's why I love it. Like it's so good. It's fucking feral. I don't like mild spoilers for Poke, I guess, but anyone who's read Poke, surely like me, has been missing this sort of content, and I was glad to see it back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. We also get the idea of a Lucy mentor team up, which is wonderful.
Yeah, like Assistant Dizit in our chat has called it the Lucy's parent teacher conference, which I love. Yeah, like again, the sort of vibes of being a major climax of Lucy's finale is definitely carried by this, mentor team up here and watching the few of them just absolutely slay a bunch of giant monsters.
Yeah, it is very good. It's very delightful.
Yeah, I especially love Anthem has this moment where he's trying to like reach out to Bubble Yum and be like, "Oh, yeah, so we're both Lucy's mentors," and she's just not having any of it. She's still holding a grudge, for understandable reasons, I guess. But I do love how Anthem is seemingly kind of the only one who is interested in talk. Like he's the only one actually bringing up Lucy and like trying to talk to the others about her. And I just thought that was like a funny energy for him to bring as in some ways the least important of her teachers, but like he's the one who keeps like going up to everyone and being like, "Oh yeah, you teach Lucy too, right? That's how about that?" Like
Yeah.
just the dad energy that he's exuding in doing that.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's the sort of small talk a dad at like a barbecue is doing. It's like, "Oh yeah, so you teach Lucy too? Like do you want a hot dog?" Um, I don't know. And I think like because like Lucy talks a lot about how she's got kind of like she's a trifold duelist, right? Like she's the goblin, the fae, and the dog of war. I do think Anthem as a teacher for her kind of represents this fourth like balancing angle, like sort of the more practitioner side to her practice too, maybe. But like I feel like Anthem has mostly consulted her on balancing all of those aspects, especially because that's what he wanted his daughters to do. Is I think he tries to talk to grandfather about. But yeah, so I also love the imagery of Anthem being the one who wants to talk to all of them, but none of them are really interested because that feels like the role he's played in shaping Lucy too, in helping her synergize these different elements.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. Now we have to talk about what is a major part of this chapter, which is just Bubble being a fucking badass.
Fucking tank, yeah.
Like, It's just like, okay, so this chapter came out like right when we were about to record, right before, sorry, like right before the end of our deadline for making the notes for our recording when we were
Yeah.
going to do it on the weekend. And so I was kind of writing my notes live as I was reading it. And it goes so well here that I was so sure Bubble was going to die by the end of the chapter. Like, that's how well it goes. I was like, oh, Bubble's going to die because there's no reason for something to go this well without a horrible, horrible drop at the end. Now, that does happen, but it's not Bubble's death. We'll get to that later. But yeah, she's
Yeah.
just such a fucking badass. Like, the Ordinary Family has been this thing that has completely fucked over anyone trying to attack the BHI, and Bubble just fucking tanks it and then also wrecks a bunch of others. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how badass she is.
And yeah, like to tie back to all the Toad Slow stuff, the way she's doing it is using Goblin Gunk, which is what they're calling the Goblin Glamour.
Yeah.
And it's also, she's got all these goblins working together, and it's in such a positive way. Like, she's swinging Ramp Jam around and just kind of like, getting ready to set him up on dates and encouraging him. And she's like, oh, Biscuit, you got that metal rim on your frisbee. Like, that's great. Like, she's so positive.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it is she's not like you can imagine a goblin that leads goblins effectively through fear and like fucking them over, kind of.
Yeah,
Whereas
well, like,
she has
not to speak ill of the dead / the best character in the story, but obviously Breastbiter was like that. Like, he was a piece of shit to all the people under him.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she's not like that.
No, and it's so wonderful how it pays off, like with Biscuit having got the silver lining, I guess. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Like it's everything Toadslaw has sort of been working towards and spruiking kind of in action. Like this small group of Eighth Court goblins here, and these are a bunch of, I think, like Bubblegum is like low mid tier at best, and it's a bunch of goblins well below her tier, and they basically take down, as you said, like the Ordinary Family and a bunch of other high rank people, kind of on their own. Like, that's fucking huge.
Mm.
And I think we talked last week, and again, Bubblegum kind of calls it out. Like, the Ordinary Family represents kind of like this weaponization of innocence, and like, when it's trying to pull them in, it's trying to make them innocent and like take the magic away from them. And this small group of goblins is just able to absolutely beat the shit out of that energy and not succumb to just innocence. And I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's such a good fight, isn't it? Like, yeah, it's just brilliant. Like, Bubble is just wonderful. And the way that she's got this big plan of being like, if I'm using Goblin Gunk, the Fae aren't going to let me claim this win, so the Wild Hunt is going to have to step it. Like, it's just so fucking clever.
It's so good. Yeah. We'll talk about that when it happens too, I think, because there's some great moments there. But yeah, I also love, I think we talked about it in the Mal interlude, but I loved Mal as a POV. I think that was 23.c, because it was like, through her we saw Kennet Found and Kennet Below kind of working together, and we were talking about how much that was like demonstrative of like Kennet's diversity as a strength, and how like there was so much to fight there, and that was why they were winning. And it's almost a little bit the same in this chapter. Like, Bubblegum's side of the field is also great to see, because we're seeing all these goblins working together in a way that's just so Kennet. Like, it's a reminder of why Toady and his Eighth Court were a Kennet thing, because it's all about just letting people find the good version of their bliss and then being able to synergize it with everyone else. And then, like, we have Bubble working with, kind of working with Winterfey, but working with Anthem, working with the dogs. Like, it's another, as much as this is like Lucy's parent teacher conference thing going on, it's also like another angle to view just the diversity of like strength and cooperation that Kennet brings to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess we jump back to Lucy, as she is battling her way through the escaping Undercity. And the thing that really landed for me is we kind of have the segment with all of Lucy's father figures to then immediately we jump back to her and she switches into her various Fox aspects. And it's just like a wonderful little piece of synergy that is delightful.
Yeah, it's a big part of why reading these chapters back to back, I was sort of like, oh, wow, this is like a big Lucy moment. Despite the fact she kind of only gets a small number of words in this chapter, like I'd say if there are 10,000 words in this chapter, she's probably only like 1 to 2,000 of them.
Yeah.
It feels like a really big Lucy chapter. That's because the mentor stuff synergizes with her fight here so perfectly.
Yeah.
Um, and like part of me also couldn't help but notice, like, if we are doing a sort of really big Lucy finale moment here, it's like, well, she's the first witch of Kennet. Does that mean Avery's next, and then Verona to follow it up? That would be really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I wanted to cut this moment where the metaphor gets really thin here. This is the part where the crowd just starts straight up yelling slurs and like rape threats at Lucy, and she's just kind of able to tune it out, keep the fight going, and it's this very like I think that was like Wildbow really trying to make it clear that like this is a moment that sort of symbolizes this fight that Lucy has been trying to figure out how to engage with since the beginning of the story. Like this is Lucy fighting the metaphorical worst parts of society and stopping them from leaking into Kennet above. Like it's and I guess I love that this idea of like she's here fighting to keep Kennet below alive while at the same time fighting against Kennet below to keep it contained. Like I think that's really interesting. It kind of sums up a really interesting angle of this whole fight that she's been engaged with, because it's not about destroying Kennet Below, otherwise she wouldn't be here. It's like she's keeping Kennet Below alive, but also cutting down the parts of it that suck, which is unfortunately just most of what's left, thanks to Charles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's oh, Charles, what a fuck. Yeah, this is the worst part, isn't it? That this is the version of Kennet Below that is left, because everyone who's good said no to Charles. This is who's left, and it's just fucked up.
Yeah, like there might be a few survivors, because I think there were people with contracts and stuff externally who they said might be safe, so there'll be some good parts left. But yeah, like I still really subscribe to the model Megafire brought in one of the recent reflecting episodes of like, I love viewing Kennet Below as the id and Kennet found as sort of the super ego, and yeah, what Charles has done here is just kind of gutted the id of anything that wasn't the worst, most violent impulses, and that's just it's a shitty thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so Bubble continues to battle through the ordinary family plus that techno creature thing.
Yeah, I mean, a quick, she shoves a booger up its nose, and that takes care of that.
And that's bada bing, bada boom.
So I love how Buddy is so smooth that he goes along gravel without friction. I'm like, that doesn't actually make sense though, Bubble. Like, you understand that's not a physics, right? Like, you know, it's magic.
Goblins,
so
they're just wild.
I also love here, yeah, like, so she takes Biscuit's special cocktail of crocodile and PCP that are both goblinified, and it turns her into a literal crocodile monster. And I was just so happy for Biscuit as much as I was cheering along with the absolute mayhem that Bubblegum wrecks here. Like, yeah, just a great little moment for Biscuit where she gets to see her dream come true as somebody takes what seems to be the worst thing she's managed to cook up.
Yeah. 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 Guillemay shows up, which completes the prophecy of all of the father mentors, the parent teachers. Just getting very tense and delightful.
Yeah, and I love how he comes onto the scene just kind of lecturing Bubblegum about how what she's doing isn't graceful. And like, he's such a goober, you know what I mean? Like, it just, why are you here lecturing a goblin on how graceful she's being? He's such a dingus.
Yeah. Yeah. Very silly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and that's sort of, I guess it's one of those things. We're seeing Winterfell through the eyes of a goblin this chapter, so I
Yeah,
guess it makes
true.
sense
True.
that they come across as extra ridiculous. But like,
Yeah.
especially, yeah, as they're about to play them like a fiddle, and it's just the vibe this chapter is like, Winterfell, you're a bit of a joke.
Mm. Yeah. Um, but yeah, it's not just the ordinary family and a techno creature. It's a full rogues gallery, including Musa, who has been pulled from somewhere dark with his stolen familiars, and Bubble makes enough of a show that the Wild Hunt can't just let her take all the credit and do all the good shit.
Yeah, now we've got to talk about this Mossa moment because it was like I I've been over the last handful of years working very hard to sort of deprogram myself from how I was raised, for that sense of like punitive justice and all that.
Mm,
But I'm not gonna lie, I felt a bit of joy when Maricica shits Mossa out of her chest hole, um, and like seeing him just reduced to this pathetic pawn of Marcy, who's just like an incredibly defeated person. There was just part of me who I just couldn't help but look at it and be like, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, Like
mm.
I'm trying not to be the sort of person who delights in things like this, but I just couldn't help but be like, well, Massa, play stupid games,
Yeah.
win stupid prizes.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this is such a worst case scenario, like such a fate worse than death for Massa. That
Yeah.
you almost feel sorry for him, but you don't.
It's a great, like, you gotta respect Charles and Maricica's sense of irony in their punishments, right? Like, making him Maricica's little bitch servant is just like, there's poetic justice in that, isn't there? Like,
Mm,
it's so wrong, but there's a poetry to it.
yeah, yeah.
I also love, yeah, all of his like familiars join this fight here, and I was like, wasn't it like last week that
Mm,
we made the comparison to the fight that's going on here and the fight with all of Moss's familiars? And I was like, yeah, this feels like an even more epic version of the fight against all Moss's familiars, and it's like they literally just join the fight this chapter, like. And they're like a minor force. Like, I love this for reinforcing how much bigger this war is than Arc 13.
mm, yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
so,
sorry. Also, I wanted to call out with Massa showing up here.
mm,
That's kind of all three BHI headmasters
if you
get
count the person in the wall as
as Bristow.
Bristow, yeah, and
Yeah,
Alexander as Alexander. Is that what
yeah.
you're
Well,
saying?
yeah. Well, because when Alexander first happened, I felt like we called out that it was like fun for the story's original villain to
Yeah,
get a moment in the finale, and then we saw Bristow, and it was
yeah,
like,
you're
oh,
right.
and so now Muster shows up, and I'm like, well, the gang's all here now, like.
Specifically, like this is what's left of them after the Kenneteers.
Yeah, it like I don't know if I have more of a thought that just it really just feels like, yeah, like I like that sort of finale vibes of we're seeing fucking the scraps of the previous fights over this hellhole that is the
Mm,
Blue Heron, which I have to assume by the end of this story is just going to get cordoned off by someone like the Legendaries. Like at this point, the Blue HI, the BHI, you just draw a big fence around it and be like, don't fucking go here. This place is a fucking curse.
mm, yeah. Ah, good times. um, but yeah, so Bubble is a hero, takes down Marcy, Mussa, Ordinary Family, and the Black Scalpel by being such a sheer fucking baller. So, gosh, well done.
Yeah. I love the moment where she gives a big like speech to Maricica as she's charging her, like the fucking movie finale vibes of this moment where she's like, "You don't get it. You can't beat down a goblin with hurt. I was born in hurt. You can't beat me down with innocence. Like I have to deal with that every day. You
Mm,
think blood is edgy and cool?" And then she like slides in it. She's like, "I live in this shit." Like it's just, oh, the spirits must have been eating that shit up because I certainly was.
mm, yeah, yeah.
And then
It's
yeah,
wonderful.
let's talk about how fucking good their play is, where Toadie and Bubs bait the Wild Hunt into actually fucking doing something and trying to get this final blow because they can't let this goblin using new goblin glamour possibly actually do their job for them. It's like they play the Winter Court or the Wild Hunt like a fucking fiddle here, which is so funny.
Mm. Yeah. It's very funny that they're so predictable by Bubble, hey? Like, Bubble is just like, has their number 100%.
Yeah, which is kind of in a way something you can only really do with the Winter Court, I think. Like they're the ones who are kind of the most formulaic in this way, but like I just love that. Yeah, like it's this eighth court. It's the goblins kind of out manipulating the fairy, but also in a very goblin-y way because the way that she does it is to yell a bunch and be in the middle of everything and be a distraction.
Mm.
Like there's nothing more goblin than confounding fairy by just being an unknown and being in the middle and being loud.
Mm.
Um, so it's a very fairy way to do it. But yeah, she just like she has their number, and it's so yeah, like what a bunch of chumps. I think more than ever felt the Eighth Court as the opposite of the Winter Court in this moment. Like
Mm.
seeing how the two of them interact, you're like, oh, I see how the goblins can play the Winter Court as much as the Winter Court can play them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Good times by Bubble. So then, we go back to Lucy, who is dueling a family man and manages to take him down again. Whoop whoop. Unfortunately, Charles is a fuckwit and gives it an undo.
And yeah, I guess so. Before we get to the undo bullshit, I do just want to shout out Oakham here. There's this great moment where Lucy is noting that a few people are getting past her and there's nothing she can do about it. Um, and then, yeah, we get this, what I think is a low key huge moment, which is where Oakham sort of comes back through and she's killed all the people that did get past Lucy.
Mm.
Um, and I guess, Lucy has spent a lot of this story talking about how she wants people to have her back and she needs people to reassure her that she's not the only one thinking this and that she's not crazy.
Mm.
And like Melissa does that here. Like she turns around and yeah, Melissa's had her back. Melissa's stopped the bad shit she couldn't stop. It's just like somebody who is just kind of. I feel like it's important that it's Melissa too. It's not like one of her best friends. It's not her mom or something. It's just like another, or just a random person who kind of knows what's up. Another aware person who's just like, no, I'm here to help you stop this bullshit. Like I think
Mm.
that's actually a big moment for Lucy here.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It was a very big moment. It was wonderful. Yeah, I don't know. Just like, yeah, Lucy wrecks shit. Oakham's there, has her moment. Like, it's awesome. And then Charles
Yeah.
fucks it.
Well, and it's also worth calling out too. Lucy just like without hesitation shoots the family man in the face, like specifically aiming for his brain.
Mm.
Which I like. I don't know. I wanted more time to sit on this, but I read the chapter too late. But I guess just because if we're talking about this as sort of a big moment in Lucy's finale, where she's been dealing a lot in this story with violence and the role it plays. Like, somebody getting shot in the brain was a pretty big moment in her tackling how she wanted to handle violence because her seeing
Mm.
John do that to Alexander shaped a lot of how she went through the rest of the story. And she barely even thinks about it when she does it here. And
Mm.
I feel like that's a moment that has more significance than I've been able to piece together what it's talking about. Because it's like, yeah,
Mm. Interesting.
shooting a person in the face through the brain, that for Lucy, that's a big deal, and she just kind of does it without thinking.
Mm.
And yeah, that's what kind of made her turn away from violence in a way. So yeah, I don't know, big moment, and I don't quite understand the ramifications of it yet.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think we'll need to, I guess, see what happens next time Lucy kills the family man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like the fight's not over yet, right? Like pretty explicitly, it's time for round 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um.
so let's talk about Charles here.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean,
I
it's
love,
crazy, right? It's such bullshit.
I
It's
love him.
he's cheating. It's a cheating.
I love him so much. I love how she complains and he's like, take it up with the judge. What a cunt. Like,
Mm,
I this is the Charles I love the most. Like this reminded me of Charles when he was talking to John in Summer Break, where John was talking about all the shit, like where John was like, "It's unfair that you're doing this. It's unfair," and Charles was just like, "Yeah, it is, isn't it? Wow, this system sure is broken." And it feels like we're kind of dealing with that Charles again. Like this is just the Charles who's just like, "What are you going to do about it?" Like, yeah, this shit is broke. I told you so,
mm,
and that's the best Charles.
yeah. Yeah. I
Like,
do. I like. Well, so yeah. I mean, Charles is pulling crazy shit, and it's as a reader, you're like, oh, like it makes so much sense, but it's just such a heart sinking moment. But then, as I was thinking about it, like this is basically exactly what Avery did one arc ago when she came back from the dead. Like, I can't get too upset that they're doing the same thing now from the other side.
oh man, that doesn't feel like a fair comparison, but I can't
Yeah,
tell you
because we're on
why.
the side of the Kenneteers.
Like,
On the side of the Kenneteers, this cheating bullshit is great. On the side of Charles and the conspirators, it's like, oh, come on, play by the rules, mate.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like deep down somewhere in me, there's logic for why that discrepancy is okay, but I don't. I don't have it. I don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so I'm just going to steal your job for a sec and say yeah, because obviously he moves right into this. We cut back to Bubblecum, who has baited the Winter Court into killing Maricica, and it feels like it's all over. And then Charles comes in here and presses redo on this one as well.
Mm.
And it's so good. This one even more than the last one. I'm like, this is just straight up bullshit. Like this is openly shitting on the rules. Like this is that kid on the playground who calls time out and then as soon as he's safe calls time back in.
It's such a perfect comparison, yeah.
like, he's like, hey, want to be my servant? She's like, okay, yeah. He's like, okay, here's a power boost and I'll heal you. And oh, you want to leave? Yeah, okay. I don't see a problem with that. Like again, I love this Charles who's just like, rules? What rules?
Mm.
This system's broken. It lets me do this. Can't you see that the system is the bad guy?
Mm. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, then this thing happens again with Bubble because we've just gotten to the bit when this happens. We're like, oh no, 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 and then of course we go back to Bubble, and the same thing happens here, and it's so bullshit. Because Bubble did so good, and I mean, I don't know. I have faith that Bubble can win this again, but still.
Yeah, and like, what? Yeah, it just pisses you off too because you're like, no, but we just played the Winter Court card, or the Wild Hunt card. I thought that was the big, like you know, Maricica is seemingly healed and more powerful than she was when the Wild Hunt was barely. Like, how the fuck do you stop her now? This is crazy.
Mm.
This has been like the recurring theme in all these interludes. It's just like it seems like things are going well. And then Charles just kind of drops another bomb on us that it's like, I genuinely don't see where we go from here.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, the closest thing I still have to a shred of hope is I'm like, wasn't Maricica, didn't she already kind of owe Charles power? Like, I know he's got a lot to spare right now, so he's handing it out willy-nilly, but I have to believe that Charles's faith in Maricica is not going to be rewarded. Like, because again, Maricica's so good at playing this game, somehow helping yourself always seems to end up helping Maricica more.
Yeah. 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 When are you going to start claiming your rewards from Marcy, huh?
Well, presumably he's sort of in a position, like he's seemingly waiting on that call from the powers that be, so he may not be worried about any debt she owes him.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the thing, Charles, we see right here, he's instantly spending a fuckload of that power he just got from undoing all of his undercities. Like,
yeah.
he, both in Kennet below and on this field, he's seemingly just spawning a bunch of elementals, boogeymen, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Which is great because again, fucking the stakes just continue to escalate wildly.
Mm,
But yeah, like it's also like very much okay. Charles is very much putting all of his eggs in the I just need to last long enough for the powers that be to call basket, which is good.
mm, yeah.
But yeah, like God, like at one point, this was just a story about a sleepy little town in the corner of Ontario, and now it's just like there's so much shit going on here. The stakes are wild. I love it.
Yeah, you remember when Miss and Matthew were like, "Don't worry, you probably won't even have to do any real investigating."
No, I
Like,
don't remember. That was
just
too many words ago.
pretend. If anyone comes around, just pretend that you're doing stuff, and we'll handle it, and you won't have to do much.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember when like the Hungry Choir was like an oh geez, oh god, huge threat.
Mm,
There's like four of those on the battlefield right now in in the BHI.
yeah. Good times. Um, but yeah, I mean, fuck Charles, and that's the end of the chapters for this week, huh?
I got Charles is just the pinnacle of villainousness in these chapters. I'm
Yeah,
enjoying him so much as a villain.
yeah, he's good, isn't he?
He, yeah, and again, I love him the most when he's got this vibe of just not caring that he's breaking the rules because that's his point.
Yeah, he's all about breaking them rules.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
Take it up with the judge.
do
That might
something.
be. It's got to be one of his best lines.
Yeah. Okay, well, should we dive into some comments from the community? Community comments. Community comments.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. I've got one from I'm easily impressed in the 23.8 thread.
Mm,
Um, which I'm easily impressed basically pointed out that like the first thing Liz does when the Alabaster shows up here is she's like, is he coming for me? Is this about me? And the Ali sort of has to be like, no, he's doing this everywhere.
mm,
And that was like exactly what happened when the Kenneteers went for the Alabaster dough. Liz came to Charles and she's like, is this about me?
mm,
And Charles was like, no, you're like 10th on their radar. You're fine.
mm.
Um, like it's just, there's just like this recurring bit for Liz. She just is so convinced everyone is out to get her. And she's always worried these are attacks on her. And it's like, she's
Nobody cares
just,
about you, Liz.
you don't rate. Like it's just such a funny like this is just the curse of being Liz. She's just convinced everyone's out to get her. It's like no, you don't understand. Nobody even cares. Like which is worse.
I
Um,
guess she just wants to feel relevant.
yeah,
Poor
like what? Yeah,
Liz.
what I'm so impressed finishes it off by saying is she's just so irrelevant to Charles. It may not have even occurred to him that he'd be killing Liz off. Like Liz.
Good stuff. Um, Liz is very funny. But yes, my comment that I put out is from PM Your Big Dong in the 23.d thread, which is just that Bubble as a goblin outdid the Fae in every way this chapter. Fae are known for glamour, trickery, and outwitting their opponents, and Bubble outwits the Fae, tricks them into joining the fight, and then kind of defeats uses them to defeat Marcy. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so funny how perfectly Bubble manipulates the Wild Hunt here, and yeah, I just loved
Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah, because we didn't call out the other aspect to the use of the goblin gunk here is she specifically puts herself in the middle of the fight and uses it as openly as possible because, like, remember, it's been a whole thing that they've been hiding this stuff from the Wild Hunt because they don't want the Wild Hunt to kill them all for inventing goblin glamour because obviously they're going to be anti that existing.
Mm.
So Bubblecom uses it as openly as possible in the middle of this fight when they can't pivot to trying to kill her and everyone on her side. Like,
Mm.
genius play because it's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, the audacity of it. It's perfect.
yeah, good times. But yeah, um, very funny stuff. Now, a quick reminder, folks, that as we approach maybe the end of the story, question mark, you can leave your predictions about what you think is going to happen in our Pale Predictor form, which is linked in the show notes down below, and we might read it out on the show. So go do that.
Yep. And again, a reminder for what we said at the start of the episode. We're continuing the mailbag thing, so leave any questions you have in the Reddit thread. Otherwise, show up for the live recording and ask them to us live.
Mm. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's the show, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Sorry this episode is delayed, but
My
thanks for
bad.
joining us anyway.
Yeah, don't forget to check out our Twitter because that's the other place you can get updates on why the episode is late. Because
Yep.
that's where I post about me being sick.
And not just that,
Um,
obviously, we also post a Pale or Otherverse themed meme every single day. So, fresh new meme every day for you to check out.
there was one this week of those daily memes, so check it out.
Well, every day.
Yep.
Elliot, so
Yep.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't forget to check out the Doof Media website as well, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find all the other Doof shows. Again, I want to call out Pale in Comparison, which is about to start Arc 15, so everybody get amongst it.
Penultimate arc. Yeah, huzzah for them. Of course, if you want to support the Duff Media Network, you can head to patreon.com/Duff Media and support the network. That money goes to us and all the creators that make content in order to keep doing the cool things that we do and do events and pay for things like fan art contests and all kinds of fun things.
Yeah. And also, don't forget to stop by Walbo's Patreon, patreon.com/Walbo. I mean, he's writing this story. There really isn't any more reason you need, I don't think, to give him what money you can spare. So head to patreon.com/Walbo.
Yeah. Cool. And have a good day.
See ya.